You will not stop me. Darth Vader will become more powerful than either of us.
I'm so tired of this shit. It's taken me a little while to meditate on this topic because I didn't want to offer just another review video like all the other channels do. If you haven't seen Rise of Skywalker, which released December 20th, you're probably in the minority. And I don't think an examination of this movie can be divorced from the circumstances that gave rise to it. It's very clear from the get-go that Disney Lucasfilm did something that hasn't been done in Star Wars before. Meaning they had a trilogy that they didn't have mapped out whatsoever.
What have you done with those plans?
J.J. Abrams, with The Force Awakens, was given creative lease to do what he does best, which is set up puzzle boxes and make people go, ooh, I remember that. But Disney put their own dick so far up their ass with The Last Jedi and the treatment of the audiences following valid criticism of that movie that they had to ensure that they had some sort of a winner. And J.J. Abrams had a very daunting task. Now, before I tear into this, I do want to acknowledge that there were some good, enjoyable parts of the movie for me. I wasn't fully satisfied with the story, of course, but the characters, the three new ones, seemed closer to how they were originally envisioned and how they're portrayed and their story arcs, if you can call them that. Poe Dameron's no longer a cuck. He actually has gotten somewhere in his military career. They preserved some of that hot-headedness and sardonic responses to things. That was all right. Finn turns out to be a Force sensitive, just untrained, much like Leia. He intuits things and he can see things in his mind. Perhaps that's why he was able to wield a lightsaber way back when. He knows where to go and what to do. He finally gets to seemingly commit self-sacrifice. Rose Tico goes, no, but wait. And he's like, Rose, shut your face. I gotta do this. So she goes, okay. And this time him and his space girlfriend are able to bring down the thing that makes that part of space make sense to the fleet. Then the guy from Heroes, who is probably the new Porkins in this movie, and Lando Calrissian and Chewbacca and like a zillion other ships come in and start to turn the tide of the battle. But apparently it's a will of the Force thing. Rey, for the first time, has some things that she's struggling with. Now, it's nice that those things are there, but for me and for many other fans, it's too little too late. And what we get is a movie that in isolation, or if I had never heard of Star Wars before in my life, it was probably okay. But the fact that I'm the type of fan I am, and Star Wars has been with me since I was a very small child, this movie was just a terrible rehash of Return of the Jedi. Now, before I get into the things that really pissed me off, I do want to point out one plot thread that I wish was pulled on. And that was this scene from The Force Awakens. Rey discovers Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber, which we're told that it was calling to her. And perhaps because the kyber crystals are alive in some strange way, that could be possible. But Maz Kanata, upon being asked,
where'd you get that?
A good question. For another time. Take it.
We did not get that time. Fail. Now it's obvious that the scenes involving General Leia Organa, Solo, had to be structured around the footage that they had. So all the dialogue and all the little looks and quirks and little tricks like filming a different actress from the back, and that's a given. If you understand about what happened to Carrie Fisher, then you can really see that. But otherwise, those scenes seem kind of halted and awkward. We see that JJ lifted an idea from the what's now Legends in the Timothy Zahn novels. Leia was trained by Luke to be a Jedi. Now in the novels, she was practicing and kind of in her Padawan phase where she could feel the Force, but she couldn't control it necessarily above a certain level. But in this movie, we find that once she senses that she's with child, she stops her Jedi training. So in a way, that kind of gives us an idea that Mary Poppins in outer space could be possible because she did have Force training. We just didn't realize it at the time. Nor did I believe that they were going to touch upon that. Although it wouldn't surprise me, Disney is very much about princesses, and Princess Leia would of course be a better Jedi than Luke Skywalker, right? Yeah. So that's an interesting aside, but in the cherry picking from that particular novel, we did not get Mara Jade. Sucks. I also heard rumors earlier this year that Ahsoka Tano could possibly make an appearance, prompting Brie Larson to cosplay in a fair attempt to try to audition for that role. We were not given Ahsoka Tano, and Larson was not allowed to play her. Thank God. Now, for me, the part of the movie that was hardest part to deal with was the return of Emperor Palpatine, Darth Sidious. Never mind the fact that Anakin Skywalker threw him down an abyss. We saw an energy explosion and then the entire station exploded. But somehow the dark side encapsulated him in an Excedrin pill. He's back. But not only is he back, he somehow knew that he would be back and left a wayfinder in the form of two holocron-looking things and a Sith dagger, which means that J.J. Abrams actually ripped himself off from the first movie that he wrote. Luke Skywalker didn't want to be found, but just in case, he left a map to himself. Palpatine is secretly building up a fleet of Star Destroyers equipped with Death Star tech, but he left a way to find it. That's perhaps a little bit clever that perhaps a Force-sensitive individual would be necessary to utilize all those pieces of wayfindery. There is one thing that supremely pisses me off about that concept. C-3PO, the only character that has been in all 9 episodes of the Skywalker saga, picks up a Sith dagger and reads it and knows exactly where the Emperor is. But his protocol droid programming forbids him to translate the Sith language. So what do? They go and get this little Mogwai guy to hack his processor and wipe out his memory, thus allowing him to read the Sith dagger. And I'm very upset about this inclusion of a Power Ranger in Star Wars. This is a long time ago. A galaxy far, far away. Rita is not a factor. We know where Palpatine is. At that point, no dagger or no little widget should be necessary. Rey should just jump in her ship and go take out Palpatine. But she doesn't. She goes back for the dagger. They tease us that Chewie's dead. No, he's not dead. We get some help from Lando Calrissian, who does nothing different in this movie than he did in the Return of the Jedi. They do the exact same thing. He's a dressed up plant on a planet. He gets them in a spaceship. They fly away. He says the thing that they need to hear, and then we don't see him again until later when he's present for the big war meeting. But then we don't see him again until it's time to attack the Final Order with the help of space horses. Now, I also want to say Adam Driver is a great actor. Ian McDiarmid is a great actor. But you hand them shit and they're forced to act it out. They can act it out the best they can, but it's still shit. Kylo Ben and Mary Sue, they have their Force bond expounded upon in this, and they get to the point where they can start to physically interact with each other over great distances. So Rey can be in Kylo Ren's bed chambers and can still have a lightsaber fight. And then that goes to the next level where we start to see that pieces of their environment can fall into the other's presence through this weird little trick. We have Snoke to thank for that, because apparently Palpatine has a room full of Snokes in a jar. Now it's interesting too, because if we come back to the reality of the crafting in this movie, Rian Johnson, his entire movie invalidated J.J. Abrams' first movie. So J.J. Abrams had to not only come up with a reason why all that stuff happened or mattered, he had to take the cues from the previous movie that didn't sit well with people and explain why that's not important anymore either. To that extent, we get a very good scene with Luke Skywalker. You know, Rey's like upset and she throws the lightsaber into a fire, but Force Ghost Luke catches it and keeps it this time, and has a very good motivational speech to give to Rey. And this is the kind of stuff that, had it been in the previous movie, that's all we wanted. Except he's dead now. And we do get to see him raise his X-Wing. That was good. Thanks for listening. But again, it's too little too late. And the scuttlebutt is that there are people at Lucasfilm that do not like Luke Skywalker or resent his place in the trilogy. So they had to make him be a piece of shit in order for Rey to be accepted as the new hope. So in death he found peace, apparently. Now we also see in a concurrent scene that, having bested Kylo Ren in lightsaber combat, she uses her Force Heal ability to seal up his lightsaber wound, which I'm still not clear if it was fatal or if it was just like a really painful hole poked through his body. But that healing being conducted fostered the return of Ben Solo. So Kylo Ren ditches his dark side identity and he's going off to save his space girlfriend. And again, this is where shit kind of goes hokey for me. Darth Sidious uses a situation to manipulate Rey, and once the fact that there's a familial connection between them revealed, that she's his granddaughter, he wants her to kill him, become the Dark Lord of the Sith, and then rule over the galaxy. And she was really close to doing it too, in front of thousands of Sith acolytes apparently. Ben Solo, after beating up the Knights of Ren with his grandfather's lightsaber, comes to the side of Rey. And then Palpatine, having literally vaporized hundreds of ships with Force lightning, steals their Force, their essence, and regenerates his body, leaving them for dead apparently, and tossing Ben down a hole. Ben comes back and Force heals Rey, and they make out for a little bit, but then he dies. So Skywalker men are not good with Force powers and keeping their life, right? Which leads us to perhaps the worst part in the film. Palpatine does the classic, "If you will not join me, you will be destroyed," and fires Sith lightning directly at Rey. And Rey has a lightsaber. She uses the Force magic to make another lightsaber come out and is walking towards the Emperor, and the Emperor goes, "I am all the Sith." And she goes, "Well, I'm all the Jedi." And you can hear like Anakin and Qui-Gon Jinn and Yoda and Obi-Wan and Luke and Palpatine is obliterated into dust. This is very, very, very lame. Simply for the fact that, why can't he shut off his Force lightning? If we go back to the Phantom Menace, I can understand why he didn't do that when he was fighting Mace Windu. Okay, he needed to manipulate Anakin's perception of what was going on. So he left the lightning on and allowed himself to be injured by it. So he could be like, "See, the Jedi were taking over." This doesn't make any sense, because if there's no stakes other than destroying Rey, he should have turned off his lightning the second he felt it coming back to him. And I don't know, produced 2 lightsabers of his own, or used the Force to throw her into wherever, outer space, open outer space. But that doesn't happen to Rey, right? Rey's the bestest Jedi ever. She was always going to win. It was always going to go this way. Let's recap. Over the course of the first two movies, which took place over about 3 or 4 days at the most, and then there's like a year in between to this, she went from picking sand out of her belly button and eating space muffins to taking down the Sith single-handedly with a little kiss from Ben. And this completely invalidates everything that Anakin and Luke had to suffer through. Now I have friends who want to be philosophical about it and say like, well, the push and pull between the dark side and the light side, it's when the light side is overpowered, the dark side rises, and when the dark side's overpowered, the light side rises. And you see that played out over different generations, from the Old Republic to the Clone Wars to the New Hope era to now this, which is a very fine argument, except that Disney needs it to be this way. They don't want to have to pay Lucas royalties on the characters he created anymore, so we need to have different characters that they can use. And if we're supposed to learn that girls are the bestest Force people ever, then somebody like Rey becomes a necessity. Thing of it is, the way that it seems to me is that Disney knew damn well that they fucked up. Kathleen Kennedy is very hard to get along with in a creative capacity unless you do exactly what she says. And she's fired more directors and writers from Star Wars than she hired. So we got J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson, two betas who are happy to lick her ass and make money and then leave without any contribution to the lore. While I can say J.J. tried, it's just too little, too late. And Rey is a Skywalker now.
My name's Immortal Coil. Like, share, subscribe. Drop me a comment. Let me know what you want to see covered on future editions of Savage Spirituality. Check out my brothers and systems in the Fandom Menace. We are a group of channels dedicated to preserving the modern mythology that is these stories which continue to inspire our souls. Together, you and I can turn around this shit show that constituted entertainment in 2020. And remember, a dream is just something that inspires us to create tomorrow.